So tonight's topic is going to be emotional eating, but it's going to be from sort of a science perspective that a lot of people don't think about or are aware of. Um, a lot of people don't really know how our emotions are made or that they're even made at all. We think that emotions are sort of a byproduct of thinking, um, but actually, our thoughts, which are constructs, they are not, they happen in our brain, but not through like biochemical um, mechanisms. However, our emotions are a biochemical response, and the emotions we feel are created by chemicals and neurotransmitters that are formed in the gut. And so this is really interesting that a lot of people don't really realize that every time they feel an emotion, it's triggering a biochemical reaction, and it also is using up some resources for your neurotransmitters. So I want to talk a little bit about that and what that kind of means for us, when we have emotions and we think we're hungry and we want to eat. But there is a particular article I'm drawing from, and I want to share it with you. If anyone wants to read it, I'm more than happy to email this out. It's pretty dense, but it's the, thank you, here. This is the article, Gut Feelings, the Emerging Biology of the Gut-Brain Communication. And here's the published information from Nature Review Neuroscience, Volume 12, August 2011. And so this article is pulling from different studies. Let me just get back to my diagram here. The article is pulling from different studies and that have been done throughout um, the last decade and kind of combining them together with some new science. The first person to realize that there was something going on with emotions in the gut, and this was back in 1880. Um, this person realized that there was something he called it visceral happening physically with people who would experience like fear emotions, and they would um, have stomach problems or have physical responses to things. Then later in 1920, they started studying again, and new theories developed about, how emotions were made and how they are so kind of tied to the gut. And people often describe emotions as like gut wrenching or butterflies in the stomach, those types of words to describe it because there was a sensation there. Now, in modern times, we know that there are different types of cells and enzymes and processes that happen in the gut, and they are connected. If you look at your spine and all the nerves that come out around it, they attach at all different points around the intestines and in different parts of the body. And the nerves have receptor ends and they communicate back through the spine and back up to the brain. And so the brain and the stomach talk to each other all the time. Everything that you may be aware of as far as neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, things like that that make us like feel happy, sad, tired, fatigue, help us sleep, all of those chemicals are made in the brain, and the gut has different receptors, and it responds to nutrients coming into the stomach, and it will create the neurons it needs. And then the brain sometimes sends signals to the gut like, hey, we're really sad, we need more X, we need more serotonin, we need more of this. Oh, we're really tired, the brain's really fatigued, and it needs more dopamine, so it sends these signals to the guts. And the gut is a very powerful, you know it's a huge organ, our intestinal tract, and so it will send the hunger signal, the satiation signal. So this is what happens sometimes. And I want to show you this diagram that's really interesting about gut sensations. We feel gut sensations, but we interpret them in the brain as emotions. So take a look at this. I want to show you this graph here. Can you see this right here? So this is kind of cool. So there is the word interoceptive. It's kind of important to know. It's kind of what we're trying to do when we are slowing down and trying to become aware of when we're full when we eat. That's called interoception. When you exercise and I send you training and you try to follow along with a video, or you try to move your body in a certain way, and you place your body a certain way and you feel your balance and you feel where you are, that's called proprioception. These are important things. The interoception is being aware of our internal state, and proprioception is being aware of like our limbs and our external states. So both are important, and both are different ways we can listen to our body. But what this article is bringing out about gut interoception is that when we, so here, take a look at this first section. There are these chemicals and different things that we have. So like here's lack of nutrients. We're hungry. We need dopamine. Okay. And so the gut will send a hunger signal. We interpret it. This row is the mind here. This is made up of memory and meta representation, which is minds, thoughts, and emotions, and we will crave it. Sometimes when we're satisfied, that gives us a sense of pleasure and wellness. So different things that we feel, things that are happening in our body, real signals for things we need, will cause a corresponding sensation and then a further corresponding emotion or brain or representation of feeling. So sometimes like here when we have inflammation, like if you've ever eaten something that doesn't agree with you, maybe you don't like puke it back up, but you just don't feel good. So take a look here. So we have abdominal pain and discomfort, and then we have fatigue, anxiety, depression, emotional pain. So sometimes doing the mind body scan, we will practice that more, but doing the kind of like, what am I feeling right now? Just like what's going on. Sometimes if we're like, I'm depressed or I'm irritated, why? You know, if we can't pinpoint the direct source externally, we can look internally to see if something's going on with our stomach, something's going on inside that can cause some of these feelings, because this is our brain interpreting those sensations. So this is really interesting how this gut signaling works with our brain. So I'm just going to unshare this now. So there's the science behind how our emotions are created. They're created by chemicals and in the gut. And so what it's important to understand is when you are experiencing something like an emotional eating craving, know that there's a biological, you know, origin, and that if you can take a moment to kind of do a mind body scan, see what is going on, practice your interoception. That's how good you can understand your internal status. Is your heart beating? Is your heart racing? You have a stomach pain? Are you hungry? A lot of times our hunger cues get misinterpreted as emotions. I think I might have previously mentioned there's a technique called HALT: hunger, anger, lonely, tired. Those are the most common emotions that are misinterpreted as hunger. So sometimes when we're having an emotional day and we're feeling hungry or cravings, one way to sort of check in, combat, just giving in and eating off plan, or eating food you don't want to eat, but you feel like emotionally compelled to do. One thing is to kind of check in with yourself, see if you can sort of grasp that the more nuanced feelings inside of you and sensations inside you, to see and make sure that you can get your body what it really needs. One thing I do with sort of the sleep coaching and overlaps here is sometimes people who are fatigued, and especially like people who work the night shift and people who have fractured sleep where they're not sleeping through the whole night, they really have a hard time sticking to a, um, a diet. Because not because they don't want to, not because they're motivated, but because they're so fatigued, their sleep quality is so poor, their gut is constantly sending hunger signals, and they are just eating because they are fatigued and they need energy and they need all those simple sugars to break down to use as energy. So one thing that I use with people who have this bad poor sleep quality is daytime power naps, because if you are getting these hunger signals But what you really are feeling when you do your mind body scan is a fatigue. Taking the power nap will take the edge off of the hunger because you've given your body what it needs. So, another one, this is from my own personal thing, is I have like some, autoimmune things that go on, and I'm trying to discover my flare ups. So I don't really know. Was diagnosed with Meniere's disease. It's autoimmune. I have to learn myself about what kinds of foods and stuff trigger the flare ups. And I have discovered, again, with like that chart I showed you, I've discovered that some mornings I wake up and I just feel like unplugged, like someone unplugged me, and I'm like cranky and I'm sore, and my stomach hurts. Well, now I know my stomach hurts. I feel kind of like unmotivated on those days, and it's a marked for me. It's like a marked difference between feeling great and fine every day and having plenty of energy and motivation, and then just completely being unplugged. And I've been able to associate those feelings through tracking, um, enough tracking and associating them with like specific foods, even specific restaurants, and it comes down to like certain ingredients they have or certain like quality of like oils or things that it's in that's just com- too inflammatory and too much of an irritant on my gut that I can perceive that sensation now. But I have first I learned to identify it by tracking these odd things. Like I never feel depressed. I never really feel unusual daytime fatigue or like not wanting to do something. I'm fairly enthusiastic. So to have like a just a random day where I'm not feeling like doing anything, it's actually not so random. It's weird. So I would track it for myself. And then I was able to track it and be like, oh, well, we also ordered takeout from here. And we got, then I said, how many times did I get takeout from there? And then I was able to line it up. And so we could find out that just some things don't work, just don't agree with me. And that's something that, we can practice and become more aware of, train our interoception to kind of help us build our toolbox of like what is food that we eat that makes us feel great and we want to keep eating more of, and then food that we eat and it doesn't always make us feel great. And just know that sometimes those trigger foods, they may not present as a stomach pain or stomach discomfort directly, but could present as some type of emotion that our brain's interpreting. So